Hello and good morning. I'm Cole Powell. Today, this presentation will cover military spending in the United States. Throughout the history of the United States, military spending has increased as global conflicts arose. But after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, military spending in the United States has seen one of its greatest jumps. Due to the enormous national debt, proposals have been made to cut military spending and use the funds in other areas that could stimulate the economy more. In times of peace, many would agree that military expenditure does not need to be as high as it is today. However, with the emergence of ISIS, citizens and politicians alike have argued that military spending must constitute a substantial part of the budget in order to maintain the safety of the nation. This debate has split American citizens and politicians and will ultimately play a significant role in the upcoming presidential election. Currently, the United States is facing the greatest debt in its history. Though the debt continues to grow, the United States Department of Defense's 2014 budget request shows military spending has steadily risen since 2001 until in recent years where it has leveled off. According to the Friends Committee on National Legislature, about 37% of the country's taxes go towards the military budget. According to Schenck and Kucinich, for an equivalent amount of funding, more jobs are produced in education, healthcare, and clean energy than by the Pentagon. Though the use of taxes in other areas could produce more jobs, proponents of an increase in spending argue that a large budget has a greater effect than employment. Many citizens agree that national security is one of the top priorities of the country, but in today's world, having more firepower than other countries or a larger army does not guarantee this. War today consists of more than just tanks and artillery, and soldiers do not just get in nice organized lines to shoot at each other. Rather, it is comprised of drones and computers, and in order to keep the country safe, the United States must not only have the latest technology, but it must be prepared for future threats. This advanced technology is part of the need for an increase in spending, as this equipment is much more expensive than in previous decades. Another area for concern is the protection of the troops fighting overseas. Due to the rough environment of the Middle East, equipment and vehicles have worn down quicker than planned for. So an increase in budget would compensate for this, and American troops would be better equipped. Since politicians are in the greatest position for a change, their opinions and ideas will have the greatest effect on the military budget. In recent years, the tendency of the Republican Party has been to increase the military budget. 2008 Republican candidate Mitt Romney has confirmed this stance by calling for a modernization of the military branches and for a turnaround for the cuts of the Obama presidency. Other Republicans like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush also affirmed the notion of added spending. In 2015, Bush stated that he hopes that Congress fully funds the Department of Homeland Security in order to better secure the United States border. However, it is not just Republican candidates and military proponents that are calling for a change in the budget. With the rise of ISIS within the past year and a greater threat to the country, both President Barack Obama and Republican potential candidate Rand Paul have called for increases in the budget. While President Obama continues to reduce the number of soldiers overseas, Obama has called for an extra $51 billion in spending to combat ISIS and to keep troops in Afghanistan. This extra funding also goes towards the nation's veterans who are requesting better care and pensions. Senator Rand Paul has also made changes in his newly proposed budget that reflect the global issues the country faces. Under Paul's previous budget, Pentagon funds would have been cut and war funding would have been eliminated. However, Paul's new proposal calls for an increase of about $76.5 billion for the Pentagon, a complete 180 from his previous proposal. While Paul claims that the change in his budget is due to the threat of ISIS, Rogers and Miller point out that such a dramatic modification could be due to the pressure from campaign funders or in an attempt to improve his chances of winning the Republican nomination. Regardless of the final verdict on the military budget, any change in spending will have a significant impact on the United States economy. One potential problem with rises in military spending is that most of the budget is funded by borrowing rather than raising taxes. With high interest rates on loans today, the national debt would grow exponentially. According to The Cost of War, a project from Brown University composed of economists, political scientists, and others, it was predicted that the rise in spending could lead to an increase in yearly mortgage payments of about $600. However, while some argue that interest rates on spending could worsen the debt, others claim that a cut in spending would have a negative effect on more than just military jobs. In the case study of North Carolina, it was found that construction jobs needed at several military bases could help employ many people in the state with the 8th highest unemployment rate. A change in budget can also have an impact on the local economy. Chris Ellis, a partner at Commercial Design Services in Tampa, Florida, reports that about 15% of their business on average year is composed of military projects, and that number can go up to about 50% in times of recession. To a company such as CDS, the loss of military projects due to cuts in spending would be detrimental. Whether the budget is raised or cut, the change will have a significant impact on the economy of the United States. Due to the enormous national debt, budget proposals across the board have called for cuts in spending. With military expenditures taking up a large portion of the budget, citizens and politicians alike have pointed toward it as a possible source for major cuts. While most politicians agree that an increase in the military budget is necessary, at least in times of international conflict, some Americans still believe cuts are necessary. This controversy over military spending in the United States has divided citizens and will be a key point of discussion in the 2016 presidential election.